All right, welcome back, grade 9s. This is it. Such an exciting end to a class. We're going to be looking at some what I would call A1 in 10.1 or A2 in 10.2. So next year in either 10.1 or 10.2, doesn't really matter which one you go into, you're going to see this anyway. You're going to see sources. And this is a great unit on economics where we can begin to teach you about sources. So we have an assignment that we're going to introduce here at the end of class today, an assignment that we're going to come back to tomorrow, and an assignment that I have an exemplar there for you as well. So it's not that there's just an assignment and you're like, man, I have no idea what to do. There's an example of what an excellent job would look like. So what we need to do, one of the skills required in social studies, is source interpretation. So we need to be able to look at a source and what we call unpack it. And then try to look through the clues and figure out if there's an opinion about something there. So, we have two sources. We have this one, the hand that will rule the world, one big union. We talked about unions today. This is fair. And then we have a second source, source 2, that is a little more complicated. So lots of people underneath a structure holding it up, and then there's some people sitting on the top. Both of them are actually sources from history. So they're cartoons that would have been used, more than 100 years ago, to be honest. So we're trying to look at this visual, and we're trying to find an ideological perspective. And an ideological perspective is a point of view. But it can be hard to find that. So we have to try to figure out, well, what's the point of view going to be about? So typically, a cartoon is going to be exposing a problem in society. And then we can find a solution to that problem that the cartoonist wants. And the solution is leading us to their ideological perspective. So, this cartoon has some industry in the background. There's a boat on the left, there's some factories on the right, and then it says the hand that will rule the world, one big union. So what's their goal? The goal is to rule the world. Their means to the end is to unionize. So what is the perspective of the cartoon? The perspective of this cartoon is pro-union. And they're suggesting that they're going to rule the world. What kinds of problems might they be experiencing 100 years ago that would force them to unite like this? So on their own, they're vulnerable, but together they can make this giant fist. And there's strength in that fist. There's strength in the collective. So based upon the 3-minute video we looked at today about the things unions have done for us, then maybe some of them would like to go on maternity leave, but they can't. So maybe that's what they're frustrated about. There's no maternity leave. Maybe, based upon the video we watched earlier, some of them have been injured on the job, and there's been no support for them. Or maybe they were charged with fixing the machine rather than somebody saying, wow, you lost a leg, here's some compensation. So maybe they're looking for operational health safety. Maybe they're looking for workers' compensation. Maybe they're tired of working 7 days a week. Maybe they're tired of seeing their children work. Maybe they're tired of working overtime but not being paid any differently. Maybe they're tired of the hiring practices. Maybe they're based on discrimination. So there's lots of concerns unions had. And we can infer that these individuals, infer means to suggest or predict or, we can say that, these individuals are angry about something. That's why they're unionized. They're concerned about something. The problem that they're experiencing is a lack of empathy or compassion from their employer. So they believe that if their employer is not going to have compassion, if they're not going to have empathy, then they're going to have to use some kind of force, hence the fist. If they're not going to, through compassion and empathy, give us the things we want, then we're going to have to force the change that we want to see. So the collective bargaining, the unionization, is being shown as this metaphorical fist, because in the fist they'll have the power to create the change that they want. We've already talked a little bit about Marxism this year, and we'll be coming back to that tomorrow as well. And Karl Marx had predicted that workers of the world would unite, much like we see here. That the workers would have an epiphany, an awakening, a moment of clarity, that they would realize that they're being exploited, that someone's making a lot of money from them, and their labor is not being valued enough. They're not getting paid enough for their services. So Marx predicted that the workers of the world would unite, break off the metaphorical chains of oppression, rise up, take over the means of production, the factories, and fight a civil war against the interests of the capitalists. And eventually, through that winning that civil war, they'd be able to create a dictatorship of the workers, a dictatorship of the proletariat, and create a communist utopia where the state could eventually wither away. That's a lot to think about here today in grade 9, but we're seeing a step towards that potentially. This idea that it is a fist, and a fist could be a strength of power, a military power, a physical threat. That there is the idea that, the hand that will rule the world one day. Rule the world seems like a Marxist idea of a worldwide revolution of workers. So there's a Marxist undertone here. There's a Marxist ideology that is pro-union, pro-labor, anti-capitalist. They're trying to expose the exploitation, and they're trying to further those things that unions got for us. They're trying to say, hey, wait, we need workplace safety. We need operational health safety. We need to be protected. And the factories and the owners of the factories, the managers of the factories, they're not going to protect us because they're driven only by greed, and it's going to cut into their profit to make things safer. So we're going to have to convince them to protect us. And it's going to be our power that will take over. So we have that happening there. In the bottom one, we have, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here, a little bit more fine detail. In this bottom one, it says the protectors of our industries, and we have lots of workers holding up. And what are they holding up? They're holding up some very rich-looking people. And the people are so rich that the cartoonists put money signs on them so that we know that they're wealthy. But down here it says linen workers average $11 a week. And cloth workers average $9 a week. Lumber workers $6 a week. Leather workers $7. Paper workers $6 a week. But yet it's paper and it's lumber and it's linen and it's cloth. These are the resources that are holding up the economy. So we're supposed to, the viewer of the cartoon, we're supposed to look at the cartoon and say, hey, wait, these guys are doing all the work. And yet, these three individuals up at the top seem to be getting a disproportionate amount of the wealth. So much like the other cartoon, this cartoon is meant to inspire us to question, is the economy fair? Are those working, are those that are really the backbone of the economy, are they being properly rewarded for it? So tomorrow, we're going to look into these two cartoons more. That's why I had you read through those exemplars. We'll look at the exemplar tomorrow and see what this type of assessment will look like in your future. I'm going to come by and give you a wipe so that you can clean up your Chromebook in your area and get ready for the end of the day.